I would like to welcome you all to our first ever webinar, which is hosted by Voice of Baloch. Now, I will be your moderator this evening. My name is Aparna Raval. I'm the editor of Voice of Baloch. So, what is Voice of Baloch? If for those who do not know what it is, we are a platform. We seek diplomatic and peaceful means and aspirations with the hopes of the Baloch people. And if you would like to follow us, we do have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account, and in a few days we should have something on YouTube as well for you to follow. Now, the other thing that we would like to speak about, like the bit about the backdrop of the discussion that we're going to have, it is important to know now Balochistan, like many other princely states, had direct treaty relations with Great Britain. However, it was not granted a complete independence. It was a betrayal of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was the first Prime Minister of Pakistan, who apparently was also the legal advisor to the Khan of Kalat. So due to this betrayal, there was a lot of repercussions that followed. Till date, there are a lot of grievances which are being brought up. And the whole idea of Voice of Baloch is Baloch need a voice, and we intend to be the voice. Okay, so before we proceed further, let me introduce you to our esteemed panelists. So our first speaker this evening is Mr. Jamal Nasir Baloch. Jamal is head of Foreign Affairs Department for Free Balochistan Movement, also a member of the Chatham House. Our second panelist this evening is Rashid Baloch. He will be back very soon, but let me introduce you who he is. He is a political activist, and he's also a student of law. He's doing his LLM, Transnational Criminal Justice. Forgive me, I am not a law student. And our third speaker this evening is Professor Shahsavar Karimzadi. He is an esteemed lecturer at Hertfordshire University, London. And he's also an author of a book called Money and Its Origins. You should definitely check that out. So now we will move forward with our discussion. Professor, would you like to be the first speaker this evening?
Yes, I think, thank you.
Aparna. Yes.
Yeah, because with internet, it's always, it's been my problem. Whenever I had an interview with any TV or anything, usually we get this sort of problem. But,
absolutely.
First of all, thank you, for inviting us.
We're very happy to have you with us.
Yes, and it's our pleasure. Well, we historically, and just, make the point clear, we historically had very good connection with the Indian and the Indian people in the nation. So we appreciate that. Let me start, I think, with your introduction, when you started. You see that Baloch is a nation. You see, when you get to the Indian, Indus River, historically, we are talking historically, is eastern part is Indian subcontinent, and the western part is Iranian plateau, and there are different nations in both sides, and historically they're very, very close anyway. So all the Iranian nations, all the Indian nations, they're very historically very close. So yes, our influence, in worldwide is is maybe in religion, politics, human rights, and or science, and all the things that you can imagine is just beyond belief, really. Okay, so
yes,
the point I would like to emphasize, see, Balochistan.
Yes.
Baloch people, Baloch nation is one of what is called Iranian nations. You see, Iran is a plate. There are different nations from Gilag, from Mazandani, from Fars, from Kurd, from Afghan, and all that. And then you get to the the Indian nations as a huge part of Indian nations. So historically, it became as an entity in 1666. So 1666 Baloch, from all the Balochistan, they became, they organized themselves, they had their nation states until the British came to Balochistan. And the reason was because, British occupied, English occupied India, and in 1838 they occupied Afghanistan, because Afghanistan again is one of the Iranian nations anyway. So as soon after they occupied the Afghans, a year after that, in 1839, they occupied Balochistan. And there was a reason for that. Because we had the Russian Empire, was coming towards the south to Central Asia, and they had the aim to get to the hot water, which is like in Balochistan, basically. So Balochistan has got like 1,300 kilometers, 400 kilometers of water from Bandar Abbas to nearly Karachi is really Baloch coastline. So they wanted to get to that hot water, and for that reason, the British, they feared that, the Russian Empire has got maybe plan for India, because next to our neighbor, Afghan's neighbor and Baloch neighbor was India. So for that reason, then they occupied Balochistan. So Balochistan was occupied in 1839 by British. And unlike, you had, of course, the progressive India, they were fighting for their rights of independence. So Baloch and Afghan, actually, they were among those nations they fought extremely hard for their independence. Unlike those, Indian that converted to Islam because they didn't want to pay tax, like what we have like in West Punjab and in Bengal. So it was this really movement, very, very strong movement that you had in Balochistan, because they had a lot of problems. British have a lot of problems. That's why they divided Balochistan in three parts. So the British, exactly like what they did in India, what they did, they used that policy of divide and rule. So what basically, because of this policy of divide and rule, they divided Balochistan in three parts. In 1871, so they drew the line, what is called the Goldsmith line. So you have Eastern Balochistan and Western Balochistan, which it was 1871. And in 1893, they drew another line, which they divided actually the Afghan. And because of that line is Joran line, 1839, so part of the Pashtun area was taken and occupied basically by British, and they put it in a part of like Indian Raj, basically. And it was the same line came to Balochistan, and they divided Balochistan, northern part of Balochistan, and gave northern part of Balochistan to Afghanistan, like Nimbus and all these sort of parts that at the moment in Afghanistan. And the same part, the Pashtun area, the Pashtun, they got a lot of problems with what is called Pakistan is a Sikh mind entity. Okay, it's basically really like, if they look at the meaning of that term, there is no individual, no rational, sane human being accept that concept, because behind that concept is the Sikh mind, like the fascist man, really. Nobody accept that. So anyhow, they gave it to Pakistan after the Pakistan was created. So since then, because I'm not going to take really long, then from 1920s, because they had a lot of problem with Baloch. Baloch never stopped in 1839 fighting. It wasn't like, I don't know, Punjabi establishment or what that, Punjabi Muslim establishment, by the way. Not because we regard Punjabis or the Bengalis, and we like Indians, okay? They're like our brothers and sisters, okay? We've got problem with Punjabi establishment.
Right.
Punjabi establishment is a stick that created Pakistan and destroyed India, basically, and causing a lot of problem for India at the moment. And they're going to be causing problem because they were same servitude, they were the same guys, British, the Indian freedom. So we've got problems with that. So it's Baloch, they fought extremely hard against the British, and for that reason, they get the 1920s. In 1920s, what the Baloch they did, Baloch they start to come up with a modern political system, because it was after that, after the remember after the First World War, you were going to be they realized that the British realized, because there was a movement. You had the Labour Party in Britain and all. There was a movement in Britain in terms of getting some rights. So the British realized that they cannot really control India forever.
Right.
After the 1917 revolution in Russia, the creation of Soviet, there was this movement of the independence. So all the progressive movement anywhere, they wanted to have, to just end the colonial rules, get a better way it was. So for that reason, they all has their first political organization. It's called Anjumane Balochistan. Yes, and with this Anjuman or association of Baloch nation, if you look at the difference, if you look at the that Baloch they have is United Balochistan, Free Democratic Balochistan, education, equality between gender, okay, establishment of the democratic, constitutional democratic government, and all these demands, they're very, very democratic. No, compare it to those people that converted to Islam in Punjab establishment. What they want is Islamofascism. What they want is to divide India based on to follow in 1930s when they created this notion of the Pakistan. You see, the notion of Pakistan was created by this Chaudhry Muhammad Ali. Chaudhry Muhammad Ali was the student came from Punjab. This individual in 1934 is the height of fascism, and it comes up with the idea of Pakistan. Now, if you look at the idea of Hindustan and Pakistan, you see this term, we understand it better than, because this term is Iranian, okay, all the nations like Kurd, like Afghan, like Lord, Mazandarani, Turkey. It means.
But Professor, I have a question for you. The thing is, we believe that Muhammad Ali Jinnah was also the advisor, the legal advisor to the Khan, right?
Yes.
So with that in mind, how did the betrayal follow? Because this is somebody they trusted.
Yeah, because that was what I was exactly coming to this point. Now, remember, when they came up with this idea, as I said, in 1920s, you had the Anjuman of Balochistan. They created the Anjuman Balochistan.
Yes.
In 1932 or 1933, I can't, okay, the exact time, I can't remember. I think it's 1932. Baloch, they realized that they have to, maybe legally, they can get their independence. Because Balochistan was never been, okay, like a colony of Britain. All the agreement that the British they had with Balochistan, Baloch, there was independent, kind of like independent entity.
Right.
So it wasn't part of any, okay, in any state or anything of Britain. So,
absolutely, yes.
1930s, they realized that if maybe legally they can get their independence.
Sure.
So that's why the Khan of Kalat, this sent using legacy, was very well known political activists basically descended to London to negotiate the process of independence of Balochistan. And when he came to London, so somehow we don't know exactly what sort of like discussion he had with the authorities, British authorities.
Right.
One thing that we know that he was advised that as if you get like a lawyer that defend your case, then it would be better through legal means to get your independence. It was because of that one, then
that's how he was approached.
The British authorities, they were looking for a lawyer. And that was one coming of the Baloch, by the way, which we come later on, we can discuss it.
Sure.
What is the Baloch they had. So they were looking for a lawyer, and when they were looking for a lawyer, Muhammad Ali Jinnah apparently was relatively well known as a lawyer, and the mistake was because they thought that he's a Muslim. That was a big mistake. He's a Muslim and a lawyer, then he can defend the rights of the Baloch. And it was from that time they approached Muhammad Ali Jinnah and paid Muhammad Ali Jinnah for 10 years. In 1936 to 1946, Muhammad Ali Jinnah was the lawyer and the legal lawyer of the Baloch. He was a servant, basically, paid. A servant. But they didn't know the background of the Muhammad Ali Jinnah, what sort of like opportunist or what sort of individual he was, So how to change his, all the religion to convert to Islam and the reason that he wanted to. I think I can. So for 10 years, 1947, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, until 1946, Muhammad Ali Jinnah never believed in the idea of the two nations. Never believed. You just give me one. He always believed, as a servitude of the British, as long as, he said, as long as the British remain in India and they control India, India is going to be colony of the Britain. And as long as that's the case, but they give some, like, I don't know, extra rights to what is called the Muslim Indian, as if they are not Indian, then he was quite happy. Until 1946, changed. It's changed not because of the Muhammad Ali Jinnah. It changed because of after 1945, the British was totally bankrupt. The British couldn't exist anymore. So they just wanted to create a problem for India. And it was at that time, remember, Churchill said, keep a bit of India, in quotation. Keep a bit of India. So they all his servitude to keep a bit of India. And it was for that reason, then they suddenly said that Muhammad Ali Jinnah is talking about another, I don't know, separation of India. So if I point to this because my colleagues maybe they want to discuss more on that issue. But the problem of India is not the problem that, started with just creation of Pakistan. Of course, it's part of the continuation of British colonialization of India. And as long as this monster, this state, India is not going to be safe. Not just safe, nobody is going to be safe in that region. Afghans, or, you put it the rest of the world with the nuclear Islamic.
Right, but as far as we know, Balochistan was given freedom for a few months, right?
Now,
like for very short-lived freedom.
Not just, he was in August.
From, what was it? From 47 to 48, August 12th. Yes?
Now, Balochistan was the first nation that, Balochistan was semi-independent. It was a totally different case.
Right.
But anyway, in the August 1947, you had standstill agreement, and this standstill agreement was signed by Baloch, by British, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, because even at that time, Muhammad Ali Jinnah totally agreed in it. He was still the legal lawyer. He was signed in your country, India, and Balochistan regained its independence. That still exists, and in 11th August 1947, Balochistan announced its independence.
Yes.
Next day, it was written in New York Times, Balochistan regained its independence. In New Delhi radio, it was announced that Balochistan regained its independence. So it was just a few days after that, was independence of India. And then, of course, the creation of this monster, what is called Pakistan.
Right.
So Pakistan, it got its independence. There was no way
Okay.
that,
So I will have to cut you short for now, so that our other panelists may be able to speak. Thank you so much. We will come back to question and answers as soon as we have some more time. I would like to bring Jamal Baloch, Mr. Jamal Baloch. We would like to hear your views. If you could give us your opinion on the matter. Pakistan's betrayal of Khan of Kalat, right?
Thanks, Aparna. Thanks.
So we don't have your video, Jamal. There you go. Okay. Yeah. All right. So please proceed.
Yeah. So some people use the vocabulary Khanate of Kalat and Kalat state, but actually it was Balochistan, and the Khanate was a Turkic and Mongol word, which was invented by the Mongols and in the Central Asia. So there were many Khanate like Tatar Khanate, Crimean Khanate, and other such kind of entities in those particular regions. And in West Europe and Eastern Europe, it was kingdom, like king, and dom means state. So the evolution of the political entity was different in these in many different parts of the world. In the West, we see the feudal system of kingdom, and in the East, it was a more tribal kind of evolution of political institution and political entities. That's why we see the tribal-centric khanates in that region. But the case of Balochistan was different, because a khanate was centralized and kingdoms both was centralized. The Baloch Khan, he was an elected Khan. Mir Ahmad was elected in 1666.
Right.
And he was a member of Kalat dynasty. So after his election, his grandson and his son used the surname Ahmadzai. That's why you can see the surname Ahmadzai in all Khans after Mir Ahmad's election. When Balochistan was a state.
Right.
Balochistan, Mir Ahmad, because there were different entities within Balochistan, but after Mir Ahmad, I think Mir Abdullah Kahar, when he got the throne, he was able to unite all the Baloch tribes under one flag. And after him, I think is in son or grandson Mir Nur Nasir Khan. He implemented institutional reforms. He made the military, the civil bureaucracy of Balochistan, and Balochistan was established as a single political entity bordering from Bandar Abbas, starting from Bandar Abbas, which is now part of the Iran, Bandar Abbas fort, and going to Karachi, and then northeast of Kandahar and all these places. And the boundaries between India and Balochistan were the Indus River. But now today, when we talk about Balochistan, they say it was Kalat state.
Right. Yes.
People have heard about Roman Empire, Roman Republic, Roman Kingdom as well. The Rome was a city. It was clearly defined city of Italy, of that region. In the ancient times, it was like the boundaries of Rome were properly defined. But because it was the seat of the government, that's why people used the word Roman Empire or Roman Kingdom. It is just a juggling of words. It is nothing to do with the territory when you use the word. The same goes with India. Delhi Sultanate, it was controlling 70 to 75% of India, but it was called Delhi Sultanate. Delhi was the seat of the government. That's the reason why it was called Delhi Sultanate. And
Yes.
when the British came in Balochistan in 1839, they had a policy of divide and rule, and some areas they controlled directly, some areas indirectly. In the case of the India, they controlled Indian population directly. First with the East India Company, and after the First War of Independence, the British Crown took over the company and they ruled India from London.
Right.
But in each case of colonization, it was divide and rule, but the nature of division and the nature of rule, the nature of colonization was different. There's a book from Australian author. Her name is Saliha Blamos, if I'm not wrong. She wrote a book called Empire by Treaty. And from North America, India, and in Latin America, Australia, New Zealand, and in other parts of the world, the British Empire used the treaties to divide and rule, to acquire land, and to make new entities according to their own interests. And this is what happened with India. As we can see, many small states were created by the British. First, they made agreements with them. Then they themselves violated the agreements and conquered those regions. And when they were ruling the India, they pitted one state. The state means the state which the British themselves created. Another state, one region, another region. They brought the idea of Aryan and Dravidian, that they are two different people, to divide the Indian people, Indian nation.
Sure.
And they applied the same thing within Balochistan. When they signed treaties, in the same treaties, when you read the treaties, they accepted the idea that Balochistan is a sovereign state. And at the same time, within the same treaty, they said, but when you're dealing with external affairs, you have to. The British have the British Empire has the power. When there is a tribal issue within Balochistan, then you have to consult with the British Empire, with their political agent. So I will show you a map. It's a small map. This is the map of, current map of Pakistan. This is Balochistan.
Right.
And Pakistan, what Pakistan says, this was Kalat state. This small district was Kalat state. Okay. And these are parts of Balochistan, all these parts, and the Indus River should be here, right there. And when we see the agreements, because we are talking about the Kalat, so it is very important that we should clear the definition of Kalat state. What was the definition of Kalat state? So the first agreement, these are the copies of agreement. The first agreement between British Empire and Balochistan was signed in 1839, and in the Article 1 it says, as Nuri Nasir Khan and his descendant, as well as his tribe and son, held the possession of the country of Kalat, Kachi, Kohistan, Makuran, Kech, Bela, and port of the Sonmiani in the time of the Ahmad Shah Durrani, they will be in future be master of the country in the same manner. So there are many agreements, not just one treaty, which was signed by the British. So it is defining the territory of Balochistan. In these treaties, you can find the word Indus River, that the Balochistan territory is starting from Indus River. You can find the words like the dominion of Khan from Afghanistan, when people are coming from Afghanistan and from India for the trade routes and for telegraph lines. So the word Kalat itself is used by Pakistan, was used by the Britain to misguide the people about Balochistan and its geography and its nature. Balochistan, I would say, Balochistan is Kalat. Kalat was Balochistan, Balochistan was Kalat. There is a city called Kalat, but when we say about the Kalat state or the Balochistan state, it is not limited to one small part, one small district of Balochistan. It was the whole Balochistan, which was, as Professor said, He discussed Dural land and Dural land. It was divided systematically by treaties by the British Empire. It was, and we see the same thing which happened with Balochistan, the division by treaties. Same thing was imposed on the people of India by the Indian Independence Act of 1947. First, they created parliamentary seats within India by on religious basis. They divided the society on the religious and ethnic basis, and then they divided the India as a single entity and created a state called Pakistan. And we see Pakistan as a continuation of British colonization in our region, and we do not accept such kind of a state. And we believe that we, the Baloch, have a right to regain our independence and statehood.
Right. Now, the thing, what Nasir, I would also like you to touch up on the topic. Now, everybody talks about the betrayal that's happened from Jinnah's side, but nobody really understands. Some people don't even understand as to why the Baloch are asking for self-determination. And most people don't even know about what's happening since 1947, you know? So I would like you to touch up on this because, see, the professor talked about how there was a betrayal that happened. But the question is, what happened after? Because some people don't even know what's going down. So if you could explain to us what happened when Pakistan takes over and then what followed, because the fight is still on. So it would be interesting to hear from you as to what's happening.
Yeah, so the occupation of Balochistan happened after 1947. The Jinnah was like, you used the word betrayal. Jinnah was an advisor of Khan because when the British brought when British brought Indian Government Act of I think 1935. So it created a small kind of assembly for the princes of Indian princes, and they included Balochistan in that assembly as well. And they regarded those states as native Indian states. And because they included Balochistan in that particular system, which was created by British Act, so Khan realized that that it is important and it is necessary to claim our status as it was in British agreement in treaties. The Balochistan is not part of India, but it is a sovereign state, different from Indian princely states.
Sure.
Jinnah was a renowned lawyer then, and that's the reason why he employed Jinnah to represent in Balochistan in India, in the office of Governor General in New Delhi.
Sure.
This is the point when Jinnah got involved with Balochistan, and he was funded by Khan of Kalat. He was given security guards even when there were troubles. But he knew a lot of things, the legal status about Balochistan history and other things. First, he argued about Balochistan. I think Rashid will also shed a light on the legal issues regarding Balochistan. But then he betrayed Balochistan when he got power, when he got the opportunity, when he got a state, when he was made Governor General of Pakistan, when Pakistan was a dominion of British Empire. So the person who led the invasion of Balochistan, and the army chief was a British. He was not a Punjabi. He was a British. The naval chief of Pakistan army was British. The air force chief was a British citizen as well. So British, along with Pakistan, because of Balochistan's strategical location, because of its geopolitical importance, they occupied Balochistan for Balochistan's resources and its significant location, which is I think every person who is listening to the webinar knows that where Balochistan is located and how it is vital for military and other interests in the.
Actually, it would be helpful if you would shed light on that as well.
Yeah, so Balochistan. Yes. Yes, Balochistan is Balochistan. Some people argue it is in South Asia. Some people argue it is in Middle East, but it is in Central Asia. When we see
Sure.
Balochistan, Balochistan has been a buffer between Indian Empire and the Persian Empire. So in the middle is the Balochistan, and that's why we see the both Zoroastrian culture, Zoroastrian culture in Balochistan, and Hindu temples as well, because it was in the center of two big civilizations, Balochistan. So
Yes.
Balochistan's natural boundaries are starting from Kirman, and they go all the way to Indus River. And from coastal
Sure.
areas go to Kandahar, Balochistan. So Balochistan's coastal belt is one of the most strategical coastal belt in the entire world. You maybe heard about Strait of Hormuz. Hormuz has been part of Balochistan. It was
Sure.
located in the influence sphere of Balochistan, and the boundaries of Balochistan are starting from Bandar Abbas, and they go to Karachi. So that's the one of the reason why they needed Balochistan, because Punjab is a landlocked country.
Yes.
Without thin coastal area, Punjab is a landlocked country. It has no value of its own. So they needed the land of Balochistan, the land of Baloch people, to make it some kind
You
of
have an
a
access to the
significant
sea.
entity within that
Yes.
particular region. And that's the reason why we see after 1970, when there was a Soviet threat in the region, why Americans gave so much money to Pakistan, so much weapon to Pakistan, and that's the reason why today they listen to Pakistan, British and American. It is not because of Punjab, it is because of Balochistan, and without
Sure.
Balochistan, there is no value of Pakistan and the Punjab and Sindh, which are, of
Right.
course, we accept the, and we believe the part of India which were divided unjustly by the British Empire.
Sure. All right, Nasir, we are going to proceed with Rashid. Thank you so much for your input. We will be doing the question answers very shortly. Rashid,
Yes,
are you there?
yes, yeah.
Rashid Baloch is a political activist, also a law student, pursuing his LLM, Transnational Criminal Justice. So he will be giving us an input on the betrayal, Pakistan's betrayal of the Khan of Kalat. So we would like to hear your views.
Okay, thank you, Aparna. As the friends have already explained the situation, the constitutional and political, plus the historical position or status of Balochistan. But I just put a short explanation to the audience and you. If we see historically, Balochistan and Baloch nation was mentioned in the Shahnama Firdausi, which is the poetry and which is the most authentic book of the Persians, in which it is mentioned that Baloch was an ally of the Persian king, where the Balochs raised cock scombs on their head, and their flag, on their flag, it was the picture of a tiger. So after that, the Balochs turned to be the enemies of Nosharwan, who was the king of Iran. It is, I think, around 700 before the Common Era. So Baloch is an indigenous nation, is living since that time. After that, actually, one thing I bring to your knowledge and to the knowledge of the public, indigenous also have the right to be a nation and to be a state. But after in 14th century, 12th century, Baloch nation laid their first foundation of a state. They laid the foundation of a federation. It was the time of Mir Jalalan. After him, his son united all Balochistan under one government, who was Chakar Khan in 14th century. After Chakar Khan, when the first Baloch federation collapsed, after that, the Khan of Kalat, who was Miro Kambrani, after Hasan Khan, who laid the foundation of the first Baloch federation in 1666 century. After that, we see Nasir Khan, who was who is the most important, and the people, Baloch people are proud of him. he united all Balochistan under a single central government who organized the military. Every department of Balochistan, were organized. They were arranged during the regime of Nasir Khan. It was 17th century. So at the time of Nasir Khan, who was recognized as the Shah of Shah by the king of Iran.
Yes.
Shah of Shah means the king of the princes, or the king of the kings, you can call it. And he had diplomatic relations with the Ottoman Empire. He had diplomatic relations with Sultan of Oman. He had diplomatic relations with Mughal. Even he was an ally of Mughal, and he was an ally of Afghan. He fought against the Persians as an ally of King of India, as an ally of King of Britain against the King of Afghanistan against the Persians, and also the King of India and the King of Afghanistan gave him annual subsidy, and also the war booties, and they were distributed between the King of Afghan and between Nasir Shah equally, who fought against the Persian in the war of Khorasan. After that, we find that Nasir Khan's death in late 17th century, I think it was 1794 when Nasir Khan died. His funeral was attended by the representatives of Oman, by the representatives of Ottoman Empire, by the
Rashid, I don't mean to interrupt you, but it would be better, since we're running short on time, it would be better if we come to like post-independence of Pakistan and what was the betrayal.
Yeah,
because we're running short on time.
Okay, I come there. So after the colonialism of Britain, in the cabinet mission, when Muhammad Ali Jinnah was the legal advisor of Khan of Kalat. So in the cabinet mission, in evening, a tea party was arranged by the Khan of Balochistan. He was not the Khan of Kalat, he was the Khan of Balochistan.
Okay.
So when the meeting, tea party was arranged, where Muhammad Ali Jinnah in a memorandum, as a legal advisor, he just put the memorandum in front of the cabinet mission, where Muhammad Ali Jinnah said that Balochistan is not part of British India, and Balochistan in connection with British India is now due to the alliance of Balochistan to British government. That's why Balochistan is an association with the British India. Otherwise, Balochistan has never been a part of British India. And also one thing more, Muhammad Ali Jinnah mentioned there that Balochistan is entitled to its independence, which was pre-colonialism, or pre-colonized era. And also Muhammad Ali Jinnah mentioned one thing more, that Balochistan is entitled to its leased areas, which were Nushki, Chaghi, and Dera Bukti, and other areas. So what happened when the partition plan in 1947? So many meetings were held between the viceroy, between Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Khan of Balochistan. So during this time, Muhammad Ali changed his position, and he many times requested Khan of Balochistan for accession, which Khan is already rejected. Later, what happened? So Khan was the Khan and British government, I mean the government of Balochistan, government of British India, and government of Pakistan then entered into an agreement on 4th August 1947, where the Balochistan independence was recognized. And what they said that about the leased areas, they are not inherited to Pakistan, inherited. So they said, we will take constitutional and legal advice upon this, and we will give the leased areas to Balochistan. So to pursue that, the king of Balochistan sent his foreign minister and his prime minister M. Aslam to Karachi to discuss the leased areas with Muhammad Ali. So here they found that Muhammad Ali has completely changed his point of view and has behavior towards Balochistan, where Muhammad Ali requested for the accession of Balochistan. So they conveyed the message to the king and the government of Balochistan, where already an elected and democratic government was established.
Yes.
So when they conveyed the message, the both upper house and lower house rejected the demand of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and also the king of Balochistan warned Muhammad Ali Jinnah that if Balochistan is forced into an accession, it will be illegal and forced accession. So on 27 March 1947, Colonel Akbar Shah with Major General Colonel Akbar Shah with the Colonel Gulzar, they marched into Kalat. At this time, Balochistan is already not acceded or was not annexed to Pakistan, so they marched and attacked on Kalat. So this statement of Colonel Akbar Shah is published in 1960 on the in newspaper of Dan Pakistani, where he accepted that I was ordered by the government of Pakistan to attack Khan of the central government of Balochistan. So they attacked Khan, where Selig Harrison mentions in his book, I found the side that he was forced to sign the Treaty of 27 March. So he was, before that, 3-4 times Khan was asked, not asked, but forced by Muhammad Ali Jinnah to sign a treaty of accession, which Khan, with this democratic government, had already rejected. So how can it be able that after that Khan enters into
that questions the legitimacy itself? Yes.
Yeah. So Pakistan deliberately had the attack on Kalat, I mean the central government of Balochistan, deliberately, which Pakistan's Major General gave an interview in Dan newspaper in 1960, which is a good legal proof that Pakistan has committed aggression against the central government and all the country of Balochistan. One thing more I want to mention to you, that under Article 1.2 of the United Nations Charter, no country is allowed to commit aggression against another country, which Pakistan has committed. Besides that, under Article 2.4, no country is allowed to use force against the South of another country, which Pakistan is committed. And Pakistan is committed the gross violation of the Article 2.1 to 4, Chapter 7 and Article 51 of the United Nations. But under International Law Commission, every state is is the responsibility of every state to support a state who is which has been attacked by another country, or a country has committed for acts. The other states are bound to not recognize such illegal acts. And the one thing more I want to mention you, that Pakistan is before the attack of central government, I mean the Kalat, Pakistan already deployed its army in the coastal areas of Balochistan before the forceful merger of Balochistan. And one thing more I want to mention, that they say that we have concluded treaties with the head of the districts. There was no any hereditary head of the districts. They were the elected heads of the districts by the Baloch public, and which is a gross violation. Any treaty which is against the peremptory norms and international law under Article 71 of the Vienna Convention.
Yes.
So so those all are treaties, and those all consequences of the treaties are illegal. So therefore, I tell you one thing, that we do not want self-determination. We want the United Nations with the other powerful countries of the civilized countries of the world to not recognize the illegal attack on Balochistan and the illegal merger of Balochistan. We don't want, because we were a separate country. Thank you.
To be recognized as a sovereign. Yes.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. So I have a question for the panelists. If anybody's interested in taking the question. The thing is, we know that there has been a betrayal that has happened. Not only was the sovereign denied of its sovereignty, but we understand it was also assimilated as a province. There's a lot that has happened with the people of Balochistan. If you could like shed a light on that and express it to like other people out there who are watching, because see, people read certain things, most people are not even aware of what's happening on the ground. So if you could tell them what has followed post independence, what has followed in Balochistan with the people. If anybody is ready to take the question, if any of the panelists, I mean,
Yes.
will be.
Yes.
Just let us know which one. So, okay, so Professor Karim Zadi is taking the question.
Yes. Yeah, I would like
Yes, sir.
to. Yeah, I think. See, the question is not. I think the
Sure.
thing is it's totally different thing. You know, you got one
Sure. Okay.
state created by British Empire because their short-run interests. As I said in
Sure.
1945, you know, the Churchill said, you know, keep a bit of India. Basically, he said divide India in three parts. You know, the Hindustan, Pakistan, and Princesstan. So
Sure.
they realized that if they, just in case, because Churchill and the colonial establishment of Britain, the main, you know, the main really force in
Yes.
the British Empire, they realized that if they lose India, because the whole British Empire, it was nothing else apart from India, you know, with all the
Absolutely.
resources. Okay, so it was meaningless, you know, with one very small nation like England, you know, to rule the whole world. It was India. You know, imagine that 1.2 million of the British like military. After the Second World War, you could see that more than half of it was they were Indian. Basically, they were from Punjab, most particular from the Punjabi Muslim.
Sure.
So after that, they realized that, and there was this fear that if after 1945 there is going to be a war between Soviet Union and West again, because of all the problem they had. So the main core establishment, British Empire, they didn't want to lose all their influence in the region, in particular in Asia. So that's why that was this fear that started after 1945. They started to think that, okay, they have to keep a bit of India. So it was not surprising, because remember at this time there was a guy by the name of Archibald Wovell. He was but this time he was the viceroy of India, and he had a very long experience of military leader,
Right.
leader in Middle East. They realized that Middle East is going to be very, very important. Losing Middle East or losing Asia, that means they're not going to have any influence. And if there is a war between Soviet Union and West, they need
Sure.
a military place in Asia. And that's what historically, since 1857, when the Indian, they started to really that seriously, they called for the
Sure.
independence or to get rid of British Empire. They, as my colleagues, they used that policy of divide and rule, and they realized that they're using the card of the religion, in particular Islam.
Sure.
So they realized that if they use that one, then it's going to be in their interest from long term, is going to help them to have some
Sure.
sort of base. So it's not surprising that they created the Muslim League. They created all the institution, the Muslim, institution in India. And basically it's not because of the people that
Sure.
converted to Islam. So people that convert to any religion, and in India there wasn't any problem. And historically, people that escaped from us, they
Yes.
went to India, they were free, or they were from Fars, they escaped, they were free. So it wasn't a big problem in India. But you see, they used that case in terms of like organizing and creating servitude. So the servitude of the British Empire is not surprising. It was from West Punjab. All the Muslim that, the establishment, you see that all the military, all the, for whatever the reason they used it, they use different names, but they used them because they needed them. And by 1940s, they realized that the British Empire, they realized that they cannot really stay.
Yes.
So that's why they made Muslim. Muslim was nothing. If you look at the first article of the Muslim League Constitution, it's this like political party is created to defend the right of the British in India, the right of the British in India. So that is not surprising that you cannot, if you just tell me one individual from West Punjab, from the West Punjab establishment, they fought for the right of the Indian. One individual. Okay? So you can see the hundreds, the Baloch, the Pashtun, the Indians, okay, they fighting for them to become independent. You have to look at this sick mindset. This sick mindset, okay, so 1947, when they 46, 45, 46, that India is going to get independent, the British, they invested a lot in organizing the most really backward, reactionary, really
Professor, let me just interrupt you a bit there. We want to know what has followed in Pakistan post independence, because
I'm sorry, but it goes back to that mindset. It goes to mindset. What happened after that in 1947, that Pakistan, okay? So Pakistan is meaningless. In the land of the nation of clean is sick mind. So the Pakistan against of Hindustan, Pakistan means the Muslim Indian, they're clean, and the Hindu Indian, they're unclean. Is basically is that. And that's what they teach it in this ghastly place in Pakistan. They teach it in the book.
We have another question coming up, Professor. I'm sorry I have to cut you short because we have a few questions coming up as well. And
give me 1 second. I finish. I'm not going to say much.
Yes.
Because after the 1948, when the Punjab establishment, Punjab Muslim establishment attacked Balochistan, you see in the history of Balochistan, we never had that much. We never had that much violence. We never had that much cruelty. We never had that stupidity. We never had that bigotry in all our history. We never had, you take Baloch women and you take them to prison and you do whatever you want and you kill them. You take all Baloch youngsters or intellectuals and you put them and kill them and you drop them. Because of this mindset, that's what I'm saying is what you have the problem with what is called at the moment Pakistani or Indian is because of the mindset. It's not surprising that you've got hundreds of Islamic fundamentalists organized in Punjab. Islamic Islam is different. Is a mindset. Is nothing to do with Islam. Is nothing to do with religion. Is nothing to do.
It's the mindset. Yes.
Frankenstein creation of the British Empire, and you've got this establishment. No, is the cause of all the problem. And if the Indian colleagues that don't get this point, they're going to be in trouble as much as we are in trouble. That's the whole thing, really. So, as I said, history we never had. We never had that sort of violence. Look at Arab decay.
Professor, we'll have to move on to the next question because people have a lot of questions and we have very little time. So,
then I start
we will. No, there's a question coming up for you as well, actually. The question coming up for you is that what could have been Jinnah's motivation from an economic point of view behind the capture of Balochistan?
Very good question. Very good question. I think whoever asked this question is very good question. Remember, it wasn't just like, because Jinnah and British and all that, we had problem as well. We Baloch. If we were organized, if we were prepared, we would ask someone like Jinnah, or we would have our own lawyers. We wouldn't go to employ a dodgy character like Jinnah to become our. Jinnah was from 10 years legal advisor. So he had more experience in terms of the like, okay, he was, in Britain and all that. He realized that geopolitical, location of Balochistan and the resources of the Balochistan. So it was Jinnah after that, after 1947, then when the Jinnah realized that, okay, Balochistan, Pakistan, we thought Balochistan, it become meaningless. It cannot survive even like, I don't know, a year. That's what you see, that's what the leader of the India, they believe. Leader of India believe that Pakistan will collapse on its own stupidity.
Right.
So, but Jinnah knew that geopolitical location of Balochistan, resources of Balochistan, they all the in terms of the long-term strategy, the location of Balochistan. For that reason, Jinnah made everything possible with the British allies to occupy Balochistan. And it's not surprising, I'm just going to stop it. You see, 1948, they occupied Balochistan. In 1953, you see the first part that they come up, the gas, the natural gas, to go out for natural gas and to make, I don't know, this Pakistan is going to have the access to natural gas. They went to Balochistan. So it's not surprising so quickly. So economically, strategically, in all aspects, Balochistan was very, very, very important. That's for that reason I realized that to as quickly as possible to occupy Balochistan. So for that, economically was very, very, very important, not just for the geopolitical structure of strategic location of Balochistan, but which is very important at the moment. So I need to stop, and I'll leave the rest of colleagues to continue their
Thanks. Well, we have another question for Jamal. Jamal, there's a question for you. What political movements did the Baloch carry out for realization of their rights? Example given is Kalat State National Party, KSNP, and what happened to them?
Okay, so it was a successor, Kalat. Successor of Anjuman-e-Ittihad Balochistan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, Kalat State National Party was a successor of Anjuman-e-Ittihad Balochistan. Actually, Anjuman-e-Ittihad Balochistan was founded by Mir Yusuf Maksi, if I'm not wrong. And he died in the Quetta earthquake in 1930s. So he was a prominent leader for the independence of Balochistan. He fought against the British colonialism and he started the political struggle. And after his death, his colleagues founded a new party called Kalat State National Party. Actually, when Balochistan got independence, the Khan made a new constitution. And there were two houses of Balochistan. One was lower house, one was common house, House of Commons, like the British model, Westminster model. And so when the elections were held after independence, so Kalat State Party, National State Party, they took part in the elections. And they got majority of the seat in the Balochistan's parliament. And they were the ones in the parliament when Jinnah told Mir Ahmad Yar Khan that you should merge Balochistan with Pakistan. Then he brought that proposal to the Balochistan Assembly, and it was debated in Balochistan Assembly, both houses. And I think, if I'm not wrong, it was in December and January. If I'm not wrong, but I am certain about the December. So there were two debates in Balochistan, and the both debate there were 3 or 4 notions within that parliament. First, we got our own identity. We are Baloch. Why should we merge with Pakistan on the religious basis if there are other Muslim states as well in our neighboring, like Afghanistan and Iran? If Islam is so important for us, if the religion is so important, if Pakistan is so religious, then we can merge with Iran or Afghanistan. Why should we merge with Pakistan?
Sure.
The other argument was from Baloch scholars, Baloch mullahs. They were members who were religious scholars, and they raised the question on Pakistan's Muslim identity as well, because they argued that the laws which are governing Pakistan are British laws. They have nothing to do with the Islam. Then why should we merge with such kind of entity which has no Islamic law at all, which is not Islamic, which is just a kind of entity which was saying they are Muslim, but we do not see anything there which inspires us in terms of religious identity. The mullahs argued against the annexation. And Kalat National Party, one of their member, Gos was Bizinju. At that time, he was young then, and after the annexation, he chose the pro-Pakistani stance and went with the federal politics. But at that time, when Balochistan was an independent, he argued that we will never merge with Pakistan because we can't compromise on our identity, on our national identity, on our culture and other things. So from all sects of societies, from all spectrum of politics within Balochistan, they were at the same point, that we will not merge with Pakistan. And after the lower house, it went to the upper house, the proposal, and they also rejected the idea of merger. And that's why when Khan in 27 March 1948, he signed, it is a biography of Khan Kalat, by the way. In this book, he accepted he had no mandate to sign the merger agreement. He had no political authority to sign the document. He was forced, and he had no other option but to sign the document. So there was a struggle within Balochistan at the time of the proposal and during the annexation. And after the annexation, Khan's brother, after a few weeks, he started the first war of independence, Aga Abdul Karim. He started the first, but he got no help from India or Afghanistan, from both states. And then he was captured, he was jailed by the Pakistani state. And then we see the whole struggle, the process, and Noroz Khan with his son and colleagues. His son and colleagues were hanged. He died at the age of 90 or something in a Pakistani prison. And then we see the struggle of now Hervesh Murray and the current struggle which was started by Mr. Herbear Murray. So the Baloch, when they were annexed forcefully, when they were occupied, on the first day started their freedom struggle, that we are a free nation, we will be a free nation. And now, as many Indians are aware of the situation of Balochistan, Baloch are struggling for the independence.
Thank you, Jamal. Do we have any more questions coming in? Anybody else interested in asking a question? We have one more panelist, Rashid, if anybody has a question. Is there a question?
Yes. He asked if you have any document or documentary which you need to share with people of Bharat, then please share. I will circulate among my circles.
I think they already did send out a message to the entire world. The whole purpose of the platform was to share a message. I believe the message has been shared. So thank you very much, Mr. Jamal Nasir Baloch. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Thanks.
Mr. Rashid Baloch, thank you so much for being here. And Professor Shahsavar Karimzadi, thank you so much for being with us. And we would also like to thank our attendees. Thank you for coming out and listening to a very important message given by our panelists. Couldn't have been explained better.
Thanks, Aparna. Thanks a lot.
Very welcome. It was a pleasure having you guys on board. With this, we are going to close our webinar. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.